Good afternoon, everyone. To call the meeting to order promptly at 1 o'clock. Does anyone have any additions to our agenda? If not, then I need a mover and a seconder, please, to that the agenda be confirmed as presented. Moved by Scott, seconded Larry. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, that would be duly recorded. No presentations or delegations. Move to 6.1. Motion to hold public meeting as required under the Municipal Act Section 357 and Planning Act Section 34. Moved by Scott. Seconded by Pat. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried as well. Thank you, Sandra.
We're going to do this first.
Pardon me?
You're calling for 6.2 first.
We are?
Yes, not Sandra. This has to come first.
Okay. So we're moving to 6.2 then?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
because that's under the municipal act.
Oh, that's the first section. Okay, thank you, Kate. So it's an application for a refund of taxes. WO 19-14/RT, that's 4986 Burnham Street North. Reduced from 219,059 to 75,941. The house was raised by fire on January 12, 2019. And WO 19-15/RT, which is 1291 Ontario Street, reduced by 62,267 to 107,000. Again, house raised by fire in April of 2019. Total reduction of municipal taxes $1,302.71. Is there anyone here present in support? Anyone seeking clarification? Is there anyone present in opposition? The answer to all those questions was no.
Okay, and you can go on to the next
So do we need a motion for that?
one. We'll do that later.
Okay. So then it's 6.3, report ZBA 02-19, Del Cressman, BL Ontario Street, condition of consents, BO 6 and 07/18.
Sandra,
Now
you
you're
want
up.
the addendum up?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. If it please council, I will review the procedures for the public meeting under the Planning Act. As your worship has said, this is a zoning amendment application in respect of a consent to sever application. I will be giving the staff report, a synopsis thereof. Actually, the reports are available on the township website. The floor will then be open to the public, those persons in support of the application, those persons in opposition to the application, those persons seeking clarification, and the applicant will have an opportunity to make comment at the end. Please make yourself known to the clerk, as your name and address must be available for the record, and you will be invited up to the microphone to speak. Following public input, council may make comments or ask questions as they deem necessary, and a bylaw will be entertained at a later point during the regular course of the meeting. Those persons requesting a copy of the notice of decision must do so in writing to the township, or you may sign the file sheet that's in the lobby. This is application ZBA 0319 for Mr. Del Cressman, vacant land on Ontario Street. The notice of public meeting was circulated to the neighboring property owners on or before June 24, 2019, and the signs were posted on the property on June 20, 2019 in accordance with the Planning Act. This is in fulfillment of condition of provisional consent granted under applications B6 and 7 of 2018 to sever for new lot creation. The proposal was in keeping with the provincial policy statement and the township official plan, and therefore provisional consent was granted by Committee of Adjustments last October, I believe. The parent lands are zoned marginal agricultural, and the proposed lands will not meet the minimum frontage and setback, frontage and area requirements, so it's proposed to rezone them to rural residential. They will be in keeping with the rural residential provisions of a minimum of 150 feet and a minimum of 1 acre. My original report spoke to minimum distance separation calculations, and I made recommendation thereon. However, I've since been in touch with OMAFRA, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, regarding minimum distance separation calculations. And I did misunderstand what I was reading a year ago and what I was reading very recently. I had a 40-minute conversation with them yesterday, and it was recommended by them that because the swine barn on the opposite side of Ontario Street has been sitting vacant for over 15 years, and there's no discussion that I've ever been made aware of to reestablish this use, that we could use setbacks for unoccupied livestock barns instead of using setbacks for occupied livestock barns. This makes a significant difference and will allow the lots to be created and any house thereon to meet the minimum setbacks of the rural residential zone without special provision being implemented in the amending bylaw. I did look at guideline 20, which does allow us to use unoccupied livestock barns, and it was determined that the setback required from the unoccupied barn is only 926 feet. Any new house on the new lots across the road will be over 1,350 feet away, so setback requirements are being surpassed. With respect to comments from the outside commenting agencies, Enbridge Pipelines voiced no concerns, comments at this time. Public Roads had no objections. County of Northumberland, they have no objection. Township Building has no objection to the zoning amendment, and the Conservation Authority also has no objection to the zoning amendment. So it appears that the proposal is in keeping with the relevant governing documents, and I have prepared a bylaw for council's consideration that rezones the property, the two severed properties, to rural residential without any special provisions. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, is there anyone here present who is in support of this application? Do you wish to make a statement, or anyone seeking clarification? Anyone present who is opposition to this public forum? See none? Then we need a motion, please, to return to our regular council meeting session. Moved by Mark, thank you. Second, Scott. All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7.1, bylaw 2019-49. Looking for a mover and a seconder. The bylaw 2019-49, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 2001-58. Council of Hamilton Land Use Control Bylaw as amended, replace certain lands within part lot 18, concession 2. That are subject to provisions consent files B6 and 7/18 into the rural residential zone. Be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed the 16th day of July 2019. Moved by Pat, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandra. 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held June 18th, 2019. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 18th, 2019 be adopted. Moved by Larry, thank you. Seconder, Pat, thanks again. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And minutes of the special council meeting. Need a mover and a seconder that minutes of the special regular council meeting held July 4th, 2019 be adopted. Moved by Mark, thank you. Seconded, Larry, thanks again. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Any business arising from the previous minutes? See none. Committee reports, 10.1. Need a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting held June 13th, 2019, be received for information. Thanks, Pat. Seconded by Mark. Yes, discussion, Pat?
I was just curious, the new business about the community care routes and them hoping to grow it to 3 or 4 days per week. They've said that they need to communicate the route to more of the communities. Is there anything that we're doing to, like, is there anything that the township itself needs to be doing to help move that forward?
Yes, Mark?
At this point, they're only looking at it, so at this point, they're not looking for anything from the municipality.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
There was one mistake in the minutes. I think there was a motion made, it said by Bruce Taylor, and it should have been Bruce Butters. If that could be
Okay.
corrected, please.
Got a note, Kate? Okay, thank you. Kate's made a note. That'll be corrected. Any other discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes then? Carried. Thank you again. Public Works and Infrastructure. Report PWI 2019-14. Read the Lakeview Restaurant request for patio. Looking for a mover and a seconder that report PWI 2019-14 regarding a request for outdoor patio at Lakeview Restaurant Bewdley be received, and further, that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. 1, the council approve the installation of a patio on municipal land. 2, that the new proposed patio does not encroach into the roadway any further than the neighboring patio at Rhino's Roadhouse. And 3, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and execute an agreement to allow for the installation of that patio. Moved by Larry. Seconded by Mark. Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Scott, go ahead.
Forgive me if it's in the report, but I thought maybe I'd see something more about insurance and third-party liability. Was it adequately addressed in the report?
Staff? Thank you, Lucas.
That will be addressed in the agreement that we include, or part of the agreement will include the insurance and liability for the restaurant.
Okay.
And the agreement is, I think, near the end of the report is another.
Okay, thank you.
So prior to its construction and use.
Yeah, and there'll be another site plan that will include more details on the actual patio construction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. Any further discussion or questions? Call the question then, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Report PWI 2019-15, a speed reduction request for Kelly Road. Looking for a mover and a seconder that report PWI 2019-15 regarding request to reduce speed on Kelly Road in Gore's Landing be received, and further, that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enact as follows. The council approved the request to reduce that speed to 50 kilometers per hour on Kelly Road. 2, that the clerk bring forward the appropriate bylaw. And 3, that Public Works staff post appropriate signage in this area. Mover? Scott, thank you. Seconded by Pat. Discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Report PWI 2019-16, a speed reduction to 50 kilometers an hour on Corkery Road. We need a mover and a seconder that report PWI 2019-16 regarding a request to reduce speed on Corkery Road be received, and further, that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. 1, the council approve the request to reduce the speed limit to 50 kilometers per hour on Corkery Road. 2, that the clerk bring forward the appropriate bylaw. And 3, that public staff post the appropriate signage in this area. Moved by Pat, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Yes, Pat?
I just have a question in regard to both of these. Once these get passed, about how long does it take for the signs actually to get put up?
Locates typically take about 5 days. We do have stock in our stock room for signs, so a week from today.
Now, with Corkery Road and there still being road work to be done, will it be after the road work's complete? I
We
I know
might-
I'll be asked.
No, we'll probably just install them when we get all the locates in, when they come in. So we'll probably install them before the road is complete.
And if I may, one more question. When the speed limit changes like that, does any notification get sent specifically to the OPP so that they know to just keep an eye out first that the speed limit has changed? Is there a way to make that happen?
We'll be at we'll be at Police Board Services next week, and between Mark and I, we'll make sure that this is brought forward.
Thank you very much.
I have a question myself. Is Corkery Road in the Hamlet area? Do we know if it's inside the designated hamlet?
I would
No.
say no.
No. Yeah, I have some concern that 50 is going to be difficult for OPP to enforce on that road. It's pretty slow. I do realize the need for it. I knew, speed reduction for sure. Did we consider 60 as a possibility, or we went right straight to 50? I know that the petition asked for 50.
Yeah, so the petition from the residents asked for 50, so we kind of, from 50 to 60 doesn't make a huge difference in my opinion, because the road is, I think, only about 2 kilometers long, so if you figure out the math, it doesn't take much longer.
I mean, there's certainly a rough topography, there's hills and corners, and I get all that, for sure. Yes, Pat?
If I may make a small comment specific to Corkery Road, even the school bus doesn't have grouped bus stops because you can't safely walk on the road with kids easily.
I think the fact that the road's only 2 kilometers, it's not going to be a huge problem for drivers, but I do see the OPP having to spend some time out there, hopefully not giving citations, hopefully just educating at the start. I'm sure that's their normal procedure. They don't just start handing out tickets. They'll stop and give lots of warnings and try to make the local drivers aware that there's been a change. Yes, Pat?
The big one for me is just the awareness. I don't know if maybe even the media could make sure that it gets noticed noted about both roads.
Do we have any way of distributing that information from a council viewpoint? Media's here today. They'll make, thank you.
Maybe we could add it to our website, I presume that will be.
Okay, so try all those things. Any further discussion? Call the question, and all in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Lucas. Recreation and Facilities, Report P and F, 2019-10, re-landscaping and flagpole plan for the Municipal Administration Building. Looking for a mover and a seconder that Report P and R 2019-10 regarding landscaping and flagpole plan for the Township Office be received, and the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. 1, the Council approves the plan and authorizes the Manager of Parks and Facilities to proceed with the installation of new flagpoles and an enhanced landscape garden for the Township Office Building to be funded from General Maintenance Operating Budget. Moved by Pat, seconded by Larry. Any discussion? Yes, Scott?
I'm in support of this, although there's a bit of information I wished I was there. What we have is we have a thumbnail sketch of the actual landscaping itself. What we don't have is it out at the road, or is it on top of the weeping bed, or is it on top of the sidewalk? Because there's nothing there. So there are conditions in my mind that need to be addressed before I actually vote yes on this.
So we're looking at right where the current flagpole is, replacing that flagpole with 3 right beside the sidewalk.
So it's not off to the side, so we can still see the front face of our building then? Okay, so then can you tell me the overall length of this?
20 feet wide by 6 feet, 20 feet long by 6 feet wide.
Okay. I guess I got the only computer you can't see numbers on, but all right. And the shrubbery is low to a point, so
16 inches.
thank you.
Any other questions? I had just one, not necessarily for Trevor, but I was just on the budgeting aspect of it. I'd be pretty honest, I was someone who brought this forward. I was concerned whether it would be a budget item for next year, but we're feeling that we have enough money in our present budget without having a shortfall somewhere?
Building maintenance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have money in the side in the building maintenance as well as cleaning. And under the maintenance provision, this is just sort of general maintenance or enhancement of the property. We feel we have sufficient funds to be able to manage it this year as opposed to waiting for next year.
Okay, thank you. I'm certainly in favor. I find it very unusual that we don't fly the provincial flag and that we don't fly our own flag. It's something I think we need. I'm definitely in favor. Any other discussion? All in favor of this motion then? That's carried again. Thank you. Thanks, Trevor. Corporate Services. Report PNG 2019-15. Read the telecommunication tower on Community Center Road. Request for resolution for tower location. Looking for a mover and a seconder that report PNG 2019-15 regarding telecommunication tower on Community Center Road be received, and that the Council of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. 1, the Council acknowledges the revised location of the Shared Networks Canada Telecommunications Tower approved by Council last September 18, 2018. Approve the location in survey reference, with the location of the tower being shown in comparison to the previous approved location in survey reference number 18-15-028-01, prepared by J.D. Barnes and dated February 26, 2019. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Pat. Seconder? I'll second it to get it on the floor. Discussion? Must be some. Yes, Scott?
There's several components of this which disappoint me as a representative of our ratepayers. It leads me to think of the old story, the old farm story about closing the barn door after the horses are out. I think there was an opportunity that this could have been dealt with in advance. I know the process has been that the conservation authorities' requirements triggered a relocation, and that would have been a perfect time for us to have been circulated again, or at least receive some type of notification. I don't believe the timelines were so tight that an email couldn't have been sent and it couldn't have been drafted off to staff and council. So I'm disappointed that didn't occur. The other disappointment I have is the letter that we received at the municipality, and I'll look to our CAO if I'm wrong here, but I believe it was under the signature of Dominic. And it dealt with any number of things that took a number of liberties, and in some ways was speaking negatively of our staff of having this information. I wish I had a copy of that letter, and at the same time, I know I shouldn't have, because it would frustrate me to address it in open council. But I'm disappointed in the nature of that letter as well. And that's my 2 comments on this particular topic. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Pat?
I just have a question. And that's about, it says in our report that we were actually notified, but through Public Works rather than through planning. Does that mean, though, that that the shared networks has still actually met all the components that are required?
Means we had a failure to communicate, that's for sure.
Like, I understand the towers there, I'm not, it's one like, cart horse, I get all that. I just don't know if legally we've met all the requirements now if the change didn't go through planning.
We have to turn to staff for input. Sorry, Sandra, put you on the spot.
Shared Networks did give the notices out as required by Industry Canada for the subject property. The information they gave to the neighboring property owners was, as you see in the top left corner of page 2 of the report, versus what staff received in the autumn of 18, top right-hand corner of page 2. Does Industry Canada still feel this is sufficient? I believe they do. I have been on the phone with them, and I believe they believe it's sufficient, but that's going to be council's call. If council is not satisfied, then this concurrence letter will not be reissued, and then there could be arbitration through Industry Canada.
Anyone else? But I have a question for clarity then, and I know this, like, I'd like to know exactly what we're voting on. We're voting on acknowledging the revised locations. That does not mean approving the revised location. It simply means we're accepting the fact that we've been notified and we do know where the tower is sitting. Is that what we're being asked to vote on?
I believe that's the way things are being worded.
Right. So this vote does not say that we approve of where the tower has been placed. It's simply that we acknowledge that we have the information, we know its exact location, we've got the detailed schematics and so forth.
And I believe the original letter, the letter of concurrence usually says council is satisfied with the public notification requirements, and all that went through.
Right.
So just reissuing that. Shared Networks is in touch with the neighboring property owners.
Yes.
And apparently is making accommodations with them for
Right.
buffering.
I realize they're attempting at this point to mitigate to the best of their ability. But this was a mix-up from the very start to the very finish.
Unfortunately, it was, yes.
Yes, completely.
Which is one of the reasons why we put in our own protocols.
Yes, it's at least helped us for the next issue. Something else, Scott?
Yeah, there's been a draft resolution from Shared Networks. What are we actually doing with that specific resolution?
We're being asked to acknowledge that resolution, that would tell us that we know the exact location of the tower.
That we're acknowledging that exact wording in that letter dated July 8th.
Yes, more staff assistance, please.
Just in response to your question, Deputy Mayor Gibb, the resolution that Mayor Kane read out is the resolution that has been submitted to the municipal office, and they are requesting that council support that resolution. And that resolution that Mayor Kane read was that council acknowledges the revised location of the Shared Networks tower that was approved in September.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, Mark?
Can we put somewhere in there, then, Kate, in relation that council was not aware of the change until after the tower had been erected? Is there anything we could add in that type of wording to perhaps, I'd leave you to wordsmith something to say that, council would have been a lot more favorable during the process if we'd had full disclosure of information as the project progressed with the changes that have taken place?
Yes, Pat? Thanks, Mark.
My only concern with that is that the township was notified. They didn't get forwarded to council because of the whole changes in staff and everything else. Like it truly was like an error in so many different ways. I almost feel like trying to put that in. I don't know. I'm happy with it the way it is. I think it's quite clear that we acknowledge that we were told.
My concern is, though, that they're asking council to approve the resolution and so forth, and everything is supposed to come through council regardless to how they sent it and whom they sent it to. So even though they sent it to some staff versus one department versus another department, it still should have came here at some point, and it didn't. The end result is they made the changes. They didn't do it to the way that we would hope they would have done it, and coming back to council and saying, these are the changes that we've had to go forward with because of the Ganaraska Conservation Authority's changes within the plan. And they never did that. They've only gone to staff and asked or had said that there'll be changes. So it would have been nice for them and for us to show them, or to at least acknowledge that that never happened. And I don't think it's fair that we go ahead and say, yes, we've acknowledged this and we've seen it, but even though we're going back to the original plan and not the plan that ended up being the plan that they developed with.
Then my question would be, could we just add the council of Township of Hamilton acknowledges receiving? And with today's, well, I don't know, the last week really, when the agenda went out, was when we received the information. Does that do it? As received on July, whatever, 2019?
Do you have some suggested wording, Mark, to rearrange the, pardon me? It'd have to be an amendment, would it not?
Yes.
That won't work?
Yes, Scott.
I'm in support of the intent of Mark's idea. I mean, I think we should tell the whole story, rather than just a part of the story. And by the way, I'm glad our cleaning contractor wasn't here when this letter came in. They might have been made responsible for it too. However, I think what we should do is defer this, let staff work on the wording with a conclusive idea that council wants the whole story told, that we are only notified after the fact, would be my suggestion. Because I don't believe it's appropriate to draft a secondary motion here at this particular moment. I think it should be drafted by staff and circulated for consideration at a future meeting.
Is this time sensitive?
It's already, the tower's already there. I don't believe that deferring it would stop them from continuing to use the tower. We're looking at 2 months now, not just one.
No licenses or permits or anything are pending, though, because of this resolution?
Not from us. I'm not aware of anything else coming from Industry Canada. The tower's up and I believe in use.
We have members of Shared Network here. Would it be appropriate to have them come forward at this time, council, or do you? Anyone in council wish to ask? I'd like to ask, is this time sensitive? Like, what is the negative effect if we defer this and get the wording changed to suit members of council? Could you please come forward to the microphone? It's Dan, isn't it? Yeah, Dan. Thank you, Dan. This is audio video, an audio visual, so we need you at the mic.
Okay.
Please state your name, Dan.
Dan Gibbons, President of Shared Network Canada.
Thank you.
And do you mind if I just give a few remarks
Yes.
to begin with, just to acknowledge that we're certainly aware that our communication was not handled perfectly as part of this file, and we have many of these towers across the province, and our goal is always to include the community as much as possible and to follow the Industry Canada guidelines and rules. I think the unfortunate situation here is our notification of to the residents in the area used the municipal address that's assigned to the property, and that municipal address is not Community Centre Road. So that, from the beginning, I think, there's probably been some potential for confusion, but that certainly wasn't our intent as a company to create that confusion in the community. I think the other thing that I want to stress is that the location was, as we've discussed, moved to accommodate the GRCA's regulated area setback requirements. The rotation of the compound, basically bringing it 20 meters closer to the road, would not trigger any additional notification under the Industry Canada rules, which is 3 times the height of the tower structure from the base of the tower is the notification radius. So from our view, we genuinely saw this as something that would not materially change people's view or reaction to the tower. I think when you look at where the tower is, yes, it is close to Community Centre Road, but it would have been close to Community Centre Road and virtually as visible as it is today had it been in the original location that was presented before we had the GRCA information. So I'm fully aware that, we're a private business, and any skepticism you have about our motivations for providing this information and the way we did it, certainly was not our intent to create any uncertainty in the process. So I think our goal with the resolution is simply to clarify that the location where the tower is built, so there's a formal record of it, because unfortunately on the original letter of concurrence, it doesn't specify tower coordinates or a tower center or anything other than a reference to the tower and the municipal address. So we think it would be helpful to say, this is the location of the tower that has finally been established. I think we've also been very open about saying that we're very, very willing to take guidance from the municipality about any mitigation measures in terms of landscaping or screening that can be placed along Community Centre Road to, obviously it's not going to hide the tower structure, but it will provide some screening to the fencing and the base of the tower and the tower compound. So any of those items we'd be more than willing to do, obviously at our cost and based on the municipality's requirements.
So in answer to my question, is this time sensitive? Can we bring this resolution back with wording that this is a very sensitive to our ratepayers, the place of this tower, and what I'm hearing from my council members is they do not want to seem to be compliant with where that tower was placed.
So in the sense that the tower is built and all the microwave licenses and other things that are required to operate the tower are in place, then no, it's not time sensitive from that perspective. It doesn't.
It's not going to interfere with your operations in any way.
I don't believe it's going to interfere with the operations of the tower site. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So that being said, then,
Can I ask
Yes,
a
Mark?
question then? I was glad to hear that you said you would look at landscaping and so forth, and it would be at your cost. Now that we are asking this to come back to council, perhaps within that staff report, we'd also ask staff to come up with some ideas to help make it look a little more attractive out there at the same time.
Yeah, I think we'd be very open to that because we'd rather have it in writing to say this is what's been requested of us as a company, and then it's a more formal requirement on us that we'll be happy to meet. Yeah, so we'd be fully supportive of that, I think. Yeah.
so then I would entertain a motion for deferral so that we can get the wording of this just exactly the way we would like it. And if it's not going to hinder your operation, then yeah, we have a motion. So what do we have to do with that? Have to defeat that motion first?
Deferral will override our motions.
Okay,
Yeah. The only one that will.
we don't have to vote on it then. Okay.
Deferral passes.
Do we even have to vote on the deferral, or is it just, we have to do, okay. So do you want to make a motion for deferral then, Mark, and seconded by Scott? Everyone understands what's happening now then, okay? All in favor? Okay, then we'll have that back at our next regular council meeting, hopefully worded so that we're comfortable with going ahead with that.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks to Mayor and Council.
Report PNG 2019-16, severance agreement for provisional consent, B1023/18. LaLaver, Deline, sorry. We need a mover and seconder. That report PNG 2019-16 regarding a severance agreement for provisional consent, files B0123/18 be received, and the Council of the Township of Hamilton and acts as follows. Council authorize the mayor and clerk by law to sign and execute the severance agreement and the required acknowledgement and directions to permit registration and the said document on title to the newly created lots in fulfillment of a condition of consent. Moved. Scott, thank you. Seconded by Pat. Discussion? Anything from staff that needs to come forward?
I believe my report is self-explanatory.
Yep,
Happy
I
to
think
answer
so.
questions.
No. If there are no questions, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Report PNG 2019-17, expense agreement. Need a mover and a seconder that report PNG 2019-17 regarding an expense agreement for a zoning bylaw amendment application be received, and that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The council authorized the mayor and clerk by bylaw to enter into an expense agreement with Chad and Shelley Houghton for a zoning bylaw amendment application at 3663 Whitney Howard Road. Moved by Pat, Seconded by Scott, thank you. Discussion? Anything from staff that needs to come forward?
This is just allowing me to work on the application. Council will make a decision on the application at a future date.
Thank you. No further discussion, all in favor? Carried. Report PNG 2019-18, the Rice Lake Beer and Cider Company. Need a mover and seconder. That report PNG 2019-18 regarding a request for support for a By the Glass Manufacturers Limited Liquor Sales License application associated with Rice Lake Beer and Cider Company Limited, located at 4741 County Road 45, Building Number 3, Baltimore. Be received, and that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. 1, that Council supports the application from the Rice Lake Beer and Cider Company Limited for a manufacturer's limited liquor sales license application associated with Rice Lake Beer and Cider Company Limited, located at 4741 County Road 45, Building 3 in Baltimore. Moved by Scott, seconded by Larry. Discussion. Scott?
Just a question to staff. Is there a time frame that we're actually approving this for, or is it indefinitely? Is there any conditions that come with our motion that we should know about or should be looking at?
My understanding of the process is that getting a liquor license is long and involved, and this is one of the first steps. And it's getting the ball rolling. The applicant will need to obtain any other required permits or site plan agreements or whatever as we go along. I believe it's indefinite for the life of the business, unless the AGO, Alcohol and Gaming Commission, has other timeframes, but I believe the council's approval would be indefinite. And the limitations that I'm aware of at this point is 5% of the gross floor area of the building. So the building, I believe, is 1,800 square foot, so 5% would be a 90 square foot commercial area, if you will. The rest of it would be devoted to the manufacturing.
Any further questions from members of council? Larry?
So this currently isn't a retail operation, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the location of this is within that small road that goes in off of 45?
Correct?
And is there enough parking?
That's
in
going
that
to be
area?
addressed in a site plan review.
Okay. I have another
Good question. Just for my own clarity again, then, obviously, this will all be in the control of the Liquor Control Board. When, I mean, they can limit the license, they can lift your license like that if you're not following the direction. The purpose of the license is so potential customers can sample the products and then buy them in bulk. That's the reason.
Yeah,
This is
like
not going to
a
be.
wine tasting, if you will, for lack of a better
Right.
example.
This is not going to be a place where people can stop off on their way home from work and,
A 90 square foot? No.
and have several drinks and then drive out and run into a hydro pole somewhere. No.
That's
Right.
not the intent of this.
Right, that's not the intent, right. This is simply to help them with their sales so that potential customers who are going to buy in bulk. Right, okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members then? All in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Report HR 2019-09, reflag etiquette and protocols. Need a mover and a seconder that report HR 2019-09 regarding the flag etiquette and protocol policy be received, and that the council of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council approves the revised policy as presented. Moved by Pat, seconded by Larry. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Looking for a mover or a seconder that report BLDG 2019-04 regarding the building department statistics for the period January to June 2019 be received for information. Moved by Scott, thank you, seconded by Mark. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaw 2019-04, bylaw exemption request. Mover and a seconder that report bylaw 2019-04 regarding a request for exemption from the noise bylaw be received, and that the council of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. It says noise, but it must be sign, right, because that's what I read before. Thanks for correcting me, Scott. That council approves the request from William G. McDonald of the Rotary Club of Cobourg for the exemption of sign bylaw 2017-17 to permit 30 sandwich board signs for Ribfest from August 6, 2019 to August 30th, 2019 be approved. Moved by Scott, seconded Pat, thank you. Any comments, questions? All in favor? It's carried. Report T 2019-12, an application per section 357 of the Municipal Act for a refund of taxes. Looking for a mover and a seconder. That report T 2019-12 regarding an application under section 357 of the Municipal Act for a write-off of taxes be received, and that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. One, that application WO19-14 4986 Burnham Street North, and application WO19-15 1291 Ontario Street be approved. Moved by Pat, seconded by Mark. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. T 2019-21, read the 220 budget schedule. A mover and a seconder that report 2019-21 regarding the 2020 budget schedule be received for information. Moved by Pat, seconded by Mark. Discussion. Scott?
I informally started to discuss this last budget, January, February. I'm a person who doesn't need a report to myself or council as a whole on incomplete numbers. I like complete numbers. And what we have is an impossibility to do that with this present schedule of proposed dates. Personally, I feel that if staff want to meet with staff and start to prepare the budget, great, but I want to see complete numbers at the end of January probably when they become available. Last year, we went through a process that we had several meetings where we had some items that were at 70%, some at 90%, some at 50%, and we're trying to create a new budget year's numbers off of incomplete information. I don't like that. I want to stretch the middle of this thing out, and thereby also stretching out the end of it, so that those first special budget meetings with council are after complete numbers are available. That also provides any members of our community an opportunity to communicate with council members and or even make a presentation on some of the components that they may be interested in. So I'm not supportive of the agenda as we have in front of us.
Pat?
I have a slightly different point of view on this one. I believe that as we had hit the end of the year, come on, okay, as we hit the end of the year, I would rather have like 80% of the budget where we know what has been spent, with usually sound background from staff of expected or things in the following 2 months, and have more time to think about it than be in January or February looking at those things with full numbers but feeling like we're under the gun to get something completed. I've done both this process and the one where we waited till everything was finalized. I like this better. If you don't want to finalize it until we've got the other numbers in, I could probably go that far, but I like having the information earlier and having a chance to think about it and not worrying about the position we're putting staff in and trying to get the next year going along.
Larry?
I agree with Scott. Couple of reasons. We're just not given enough information up front. We spent a lot of time in council discussing the budget with no resolutions until January. We didn't pass the budget until February 19th of this year. And we don't know what's going to happen with the provincial government when it comes forward to download more costs onto us. So there's a lot of work that has to be done on this prior to getting council to start the process. And I agree with Scott that we've got to let the ratepayers in the township have a more concise look at this document. So I don't agree with the timeline that has been proposed, and I suggest that we defer it to allowing staff to come back with something a little bit more, consistent with what Scott's discussing there.
I have no problem. We could delay it until January. I mean, that's not a big issue. I mean, it'd be nice to get it done in December because, I mean, you are talking, expenditures that you are going to be moving forward with, and the earlier the better, in my opinion, especially if you're looking at big purchases that require some time frames. And perhaps maybe, Paul, if we are going to extend this, perhaps you may want to go to your departments and say, is there some purchases that are time sensitive and that need to be looked at ahead of time where we could, pre-approve and so forth before the budget's actually passed. But to move it a month out into January I don't really have a big issue if we move it to January, but I don't think we should do hold off on a lot of our work till January, because I mean that means you can lose February and March very quickly. So it's nice to get some of the preliminary work done, perhaps move this back instead of starting in July, August, September, maybe just move it back a month and go from August, September, October and move everything down 1 month. I don't think that'll be a big issue in the end.
This year's later budget would have been attributed to the fact that it was a brand-new council. That's the first year budget will always be a little bit later than the succeeding budgets. So that's why this year's budget didn't get into February there. Yes?
Yeah, but don't forget, we're still getting bids in. And it's August. We don't have work done. And, I don't see why we can't push this back. Take a look at Coburg now, mind you, they probably have a much larger budget. But we spent a lot of time looking at numbers that weren't complete and finalized. So I see that as a waste of time. So by pushing it back, I would say to October to start the process.
The advantage of trying to get the budget moving more quickly is for us to put our RFPs for our departments to get better bids, more bids, because companies won't have, committed their times.
I would suggest that some of the people, we didn't get bids in some number of cases. So I don't see that as a holdback.
Yes, Pat?
I agree that when we have it done sooner, then we can put out our RFPs and things sooner. So I think maybe I'm just not understanding quite what you're saying with that part. But the other thing is like I said, I've done both systems. The thing I really disliked about moving it so that we're not finalizing to March or April, which is sort of your timeline, is that we end up getting all sorts of things in isolation. We need this now, we need this now, we need this now. And then we're not looking at the budget as a whole. We're going, oh, yeah, okay, let's approve this truck. And we're not seeing the big picture, and that really bothers me.
And that did happen in this year's budget. Consider Mark's idea of just moving it 1 month. So you're asking, that would mean only bringing a draft budget forward in January. We're not looking at passing a budget again until February or March. Yes, Mark?
It does say bring the draft budget for approval in December, so we'd be just doing that in January instead. So we'd be actually passing the budget
So we could pass the budget
in January,
in January, yeah.
or at least make these timeframes work out so that we are passing it in January, so that you have your final numbers in from,
I would not want it to go
2019.
past, I would not want it to go past January at the latest.
and realistically, county council, which is monstrous compared to ours, I mean, it's well over $100 million. Theirs
114,
is done
actually.
a lot of times it can be done in December, and I know they quite often wait until January just to hear public comment and so forth, so.
And speaking of public comment, that was something that I had written down somewhere during our the first special budget meeting. I was hoping we could set aside perhaps a 30-minute block of time for some public input. It would have to be, obviously, we'd have to think about how we would do that and how we would control that session, but it would give members of the public an opportunity after Paul had presented his public budget discussion, and would give them a month to 2 months to come back and have a session. I don't think there's any reason that we need to be worried about having some public input. I mean, ultimately, the control of the budget is here with these 5 people. We might actually get some good ideas come forward, so I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but if, I'd like to ask if we could move that into the budget schedule, that at least at one of those meetings, we have a block of time. Yes, Scott?
I certainly want the public to have an opportunity to participate. At this point in time, we have the potential of a lot of good comments coming forward. We don't know that it's going to be the case, but we certainly do know that if we don't provide them the opportunity, we aren't going to get any good ideas. So let's provide them the opportunity. Bill, you suggested maybe half an hour. I think maybe that's the part of the comment you made I might not agree with 100%. Let's provide them an opportunity, and I'll deal with that in general, and I'm very supportive of that idea. However, I still want to emphasize my concern. I don't know how to do a 2021 budget when I don't know the numbers from 2020 or 2019. And I maybe shouldn't be saying 21 that far out, but I don't know how to do the next year's budget when I don't have last year's numbers. And that's why I'm saying that the November proposal here, which is only going to have the end of October information at best, and maybe not even that, maybe the middle of October information. I don't know how to project that into a following year. We'll have numbers that are only at 30% on our line items. That bothersome to me. I can't emphasize that enough. I did it last year, and I did it the year before, and I'm getting louder about it and getting more frustrated about it. My apologies to that. But I can't do it. Bottom line, I don't know how anybody can tell me what to spend in the next year when we haven't got this year's under control.
Any more comments from council? Yes,
I'll just say that this is actually a budget that we're looking at and a forecast that we're looking at for the next year. Those numbers can change from year to year depending on how we want to budget things. I mean, it doesn't matter what this year's year ends are going to be necessarily to what you're going to budget next year's for next year's year ends. So those things can change throughout the, from year to year even. So in our budget, what we're doing is actually budgeting. We're not looking at necessarily just what our year end is. That's up to our treasurer to bring those reports back, and if he's seeing something that's way out of whack or that we've overspent on, then he would be doing that throughout the year and letting us know that, and letting us know that we've overspent or that a project didn't go through because of timing and so forth. So at this point, I mean, we're halfway through this year. I haven't heard of anything like that, and I presume Paul would be bringing those things forward if that was the case. So we're just looking at budgeting. We're not just looking at year ends. So that's why when staff bring their reports forward, it's to actually do budgeting, and year ends is our treasurer's, that would be his report, and him bringing those things forward.
so we have a motion on the floor.
Could we have it repeated?
It's to move and second that report regarding the 2020 budget schedule be received for information. If we're suggesting a change in the time frame, then I don't know who made the motion now.
It was moved by Councillor McCourt, seconded by Councillor Lotion.
So, yes, Mark.
Can we perhaps make an amendment or a change to that motion to move everything so that our final approval would be in the month of January? And that, I think Bill's suggestion is well warranted, that we perhaps have a public forum or public session in some part of December, so that if they have any ideas or anything that they would like to present, be added to this draft proposal.
So you're basically saying that we'll just basically shove all this down 1 month?
Yes.
Just right from the top to the bottom?
Yeah, and add the public session a little later on so that we do have some public.
Pat, you made the original motion there, you?
That, when we were originally discussing it, I was
You're
saying
okay with
January I
that?
was fine with, so I'm fine with that change.
Okay.
And I like the public forum section.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to see it pushed any farther than that. All right, then, so we're voting on the motion that we receive this information with basically a 1 month shift. Everyone clear? All in favor? Carried. $13.10, the strategic plan. Need a mover and a seconder that report CAO 2019-06 regarding the strategic plan 2023 be received, and that the Council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The council adopts the document as the strategic plan for the municipality and directs staff to implement the plan and report back to council on the progress. Moved. Pat, seconded by. Okay, Mark, thank you. Get it on the floor. There must be discussion. Yes, Larry?
I'd like to see this, I'd like to put a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we defer the strategic plan until more public input can be made. I don't think they've been given the proper opportunity. I've gotten a number of emails as probably everybody else did, that they don't, the public doesn't believe that they've had enough input into this. I think, and they deserve that. The strategic plan is more than just staff and council making suggestions, and I don't think they've had the appropriate opportunity to do that.
I did receive those emails as well. I did forward them to staff as well, so they are aware now. But I don't think the staff did have that information until just last night, probably, was it?
So through you, Mayor Kane,
Yes.
if I may.
Yes.
So I was aware of the email sent from, I guess, the residents' taxpayer group. That was the first time that I had seen it forwarded on by the mayor. I think it's not an accurate email in that there's now been a presentation, a committee of the whole to council and to the public. The document's been posted for now almost a month online, available for the public to view, to comment on. The presentation that was made by me last month was recorded and available for the public to look at every day if they were interested. And I haven't checked the number of views, so I can't confirm if that's occurred or not. I'm sure it's riveting video viewing. But in any case, subsequent to the presentation, as a result of council's comments, I did reach out to the county. I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, and there were 2 emails received from 2 representatives of the citizens taxpayer group. And I've made changes to the document to reflect that input. So, in fact, the email you received, I guess, was not quite accurate, that no one's had a chance to comment. I've made comments, I've reflected comments from the county, the chamber, 2 taxpayers, staff, and council in preparation of this document. There's no statutory requirement for us to say, like the Planning Act, you need a certain number of notice period. This is council's document, so council can do what they want. However, I feel we have sufficient information presented in the plan. It's a guidance document for staff, for council, about how the community is going to proceed. I think my recommendation continues to be for council to adopt the document. We'll report back to you on progress. We'll be securing budget approvals from you to implement the plan, and we'll be achieving the goals of the plan. If for some reason things change, which they do, we come back and we update the plan accordingly during the course of the term of council. So again, my recommendation is adopt the plan as it is. We'll proceed and implement and promote the document to the community. If there's further input, we can of course deal with it during the course of implementation.
Thank you. So just to be clear, then, this is what we refer to as a living document. So we can
That's
make
correct.
changes on a month-to-month basis based on, like, for example, if there still is input to come forward from members of the public. Because we passed this today, doesn't mean we can't change it tomorrow. Is that correct?
That's quite accurate. So that's correct. What it is ideally you're taking a document where you're going into the future and you're looking and you're going to try to accomplish things, but as circumstances change for positively and negatively, you'll make updates to your plan, and that will be up again to council to decide upon how to do that and when to do that.
Right. But the fact that it's not written in stone is very significant.
It's a policy directional document, so again, it's not a legislated thing saying nothing can or can't occur, but our goal is to meet some of those targets. I've already started to meet with staff to get them, the tasks sort of crystallized in their performance agreements with me. So we're trying to get some of the work done. As you know, we're already 6 months into the year, so progress has to continue. And we want to make sure we do that, but certainly directionally, I feel it's accomplishing the four sort of pillars that we're working towards. Those are good objectives to work towards. And again, as council hears the input or sees the input and sees the progress, we can of course make updates as needed.
Yes, Larry?
I just want to clarify that the recommendations that were sent to council or to the CAO for the strategic on January 25th and also, sorry, June 25th and June 21 were incorporated? These were from Diane Haruska and Faye McFarland.
Right. Through you,
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor Kane. So I reviewed those comments and I took pieces of both of those emails and I adopted changes into it. Did I adopt absolutely every comment? No, but I brought forward and I can highlight them to you if you like. I'll take a moment. So for example, on the comments on the context about how the plan was prepared and approved. So this document was written as if it would be then approved by council. So I've updated some of the timing requirements that were identified to reflect the comments received in those emails. I also made changes removing on page 5 some of the word art diagrams from page 5 and as well as in the values and the as well. So trying to clean up the document to reflect those comments as well. In addition, on the on page 11, I've included references to the Blue Dot resolution to protect the health of the township, of residents, and the environment, as well as a comment from the Chamber of Commerce about preparing a climate change action plan in conjunction with our partners, which is work that we plan to do this year. In addition to those comments, I also made updates to the last page, which included some of the threats, which include climate change being an impact on the township, as well as some editing out some comments that were identified through those emails as being not as helpful for the document. So I did make some changes. I didn't change some of the terms as far as assets versus infrastructure. I felt that the term asset was one that was used by council and by staff, so that I didn't want to reframe that discussion. And I didn't make some changes to the process because I felt, again, having posted the document online, presented it, circulated, and received these email comments, that was sufficient public input at this point for council to consider. And that, again, as the mayor's pointed out, if there's further input received, council can review the document with staff and make updates in the future. So that's the nature of the comments. The changes I made, reviewing them based on my experience and working with several strategic plans in the past that I could feel that I could bring forward those changes for those improvements from the public comment.
Thank you. The only thing I appreciate that on their behalf also. The only thing I would think in the future is that when we're doing strategic plans, we should include the public in open discussions about a strategic plan. Coburg does this. They are actually a part of the formulating of it. You know, we had a session there that you had council, and we actively participated in the discussion. I don't think we do it enough. I keep saying that. I think we have to remember that we're elected officials, but we need to get some input directly from the public. We rely too much on the internet and emails coming back and forth. We've got to get out there and we've got to start interacting with the public more often on certain issues that really impact them. And with that, I'm through talking and appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further? So we have a motion on the floor. Oh, I'm sorry, Pat, I missed you.
Yeah, look this way, Bill. I understand the frustration, actually, of not feeling like we have enough public input. I think that we did a lot this year to try and make sure that we were getting more. I know that the quick and easy answer is, well, let's have a public meeting. But I also know realistically that if you get 2 or 3 people attending, that public input is watered down because there's only 2 or 3 people attending. I don't know if one of the things that we could be considering when we're talking about public input is maybe having a question period at the end when the strategic plan comes up for review. Just as a possibility, because I would like more public input, but I know the easy answer doesn't serve us well.
Our last public meeting on development charges had 1 person here, so yes, it can be always not time well spent. We do have a motion on the floor to accept the strategic plan for the municipality and to direct staff to implement it and report back to council as it proceeds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Report CD 2019-18, the municipal election report. Looking for a mover and a seconder that report CD 2019-18 regarding the 2018 municipal and school board election be received, and that the council of the township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The report CD 2019-18 be received for information, and 2, that council approve the alternative voting method of internet telephone for 2022 municipal and school board election with IntelliVote Systems, Inc. Mover. Need to have someone move this so we can get it on the floor, please. Thank you. Pat, moved and seconded by Scott.
Discussion.
Discussion, yes. I think we have all received multiple emails. Seems to be a campaign of sorts. So let's carry on with discussion. Scott, go ahead.
Well, to be quite honest with you, the public has communicated with me asking that this be deferred. I don't believe it's time sensitive considering the next municipal election is as far out as it is. To be quite honest with you, our ratepayers group wants to make a presentation when available, September, October. I'm in support of that, and I will make a motion that we defer it until the presentation's been brought forward.
Do we need a seconder for that? Or do we have? Thank you, Larry. Any other discussion?
So we already have
A motion on the floor.
report
Right.
from Councilor
Motion.
Deputy Mayor
Chip.
as a mover and seconder
Okay.
on this.
So Scott wants to defer. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just
Yes,
speak to the report?
absolutely.
Perhaps it's the recommendation number 2 that might be the subject matter that may not be agreeable. Would council consider just receiving the report for information? A big driver of the report was meeting the accessibility requirements that were legislated to meet. And I've spoken about that, quite frankly, in this whole report. And if any consideration as to the type of election that would be run for the next election, then if council wants that portion deferred or another report brought forward at a later time for discussion on that after the public makes their deputation.
Sounds, does that sound to you?
As a mover of one of the motions for deferral, I'm more than willing to accept that as a suggested idea and support it. Don't do just how we go through the process in relationship to our motions.
Let's do a whole bunch of backpedaling then. We go back to our original motion.
Amend
Yeah.
their motion. So it was moved by Councillor McCord, seconded by Deputy Mayor Jim, to receive the report and also approve the alternative voting methods. So to amend the motion just to receive the report.
I would be willing with that amendment.
Okay, they're both nodding, yes, so that, try to make this clear then, so the motion on the floor is simply to receive this for information, and any decisions around the next voting in 2022 will be left until after we've had some input.
What about the motion of deferral, which
Well, we don't-
normally
we're not
trumps
gonna
the
need it.
previous
We're
motion?
not gonna need it.
Seconded.
Pardon me?
We will need it.
You can get a second.
It was
Yes, Larry
seconded.
seconded.
Yeah, I did second it, but we won't.
Did you?
We'll just vote on it and it'll sit here.
If we vote on the original motion and pass it, then,
Then just
Vote on the
amend it.
deferral, though, don't we?
yeah, okay. Should we vote, let's vote on the deferral then. Who wants to defer the entire thing? All in favor? No. So that motion for deferral is defeated. And we'll go back to the original motion with the amendment, simply to receive it for information. All in favor? And that's carried,
That's just to receive the information.
Correct.
only.
So we're not going to vote on the second.
No, we're not.
No,
We're not going to vote on it at all. We're going to wait.
So that's been taken out of the,
it's
Yes.
being struck from the
Yes.
resolution.
so we're not shooting at the protocol.
I'm believing we got a protocol problem here.
Before we leave, I'd like to compliment Kate on getting this forward so early, well in advance of the next election. We're not having this come forward and, 6 months before we need it and find ourselves in a mess. So thanks very much, Kate, for getting this forward early. Yes?
I'd just like to comment, Kate, thank you for bringing that report forward. The interesting aspect to that report is that the larger number of voters were the 60, 70, or I should say the 50, 60, 70, and God bless them in the 80s. And I'm concerned about the fact that the low turnout for younger voters was so low. There seems to be an apathy with the younger people regarding politics, and I don't know what we can do to increase those numbers. But I suppose that it's in general across the province, those kinds of numbers.
I think that's one of the reasons we're trying to use internet and telephone to get the younger
But that-
people involved.
Yeah, but they're the lowest number on
I see.
the totem pole. It seems to be the higher numbers that are coming out, so I don't know, maybe if you can keep us abreast of any revelations that the voting public would like to hear, that'd be good. Thank you.
All right, we're ready to move on then. Report CD 2019-19, the municipal tree canopy and natural vegetation policy. Looking for a mover and a seconder. That report CD 2019-19 regarding a municipal tree canopy and natural vegetation policy as required by Bill 68 be received, and that the council of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The council approve the municipal tree canopy and natural vegetation policies presented, and further, that the policy be added to the municipal policy manual. Mover, please. Pat, seconded by Larry. Discussion. Scott.
Could someone tell me what 5.11 means when it says, support the replacement of native trees that are proposed to be removed as part of a development? And I'll end there. We recently had a severance. where a condition from the Conservation Authority came forward to have tree replanting on a 3-to-1 ratio on a property that was completely treed, which meant could not physically be accomplished. I'm concerned when we're using the word development in 511 that it could be construed to mean a severance or construction of a building on a property. And I don't want to support that if that's what it does mean. So I'm asking for what does 5.11 truly mean?
Got everybody looking, Scott?
Through you, Mayor Kane,
Yes,
I
go
can
ahead.
respond to that. I think you want to read it in the broadest sense that it's a development. So it could be a severance, it could be a building, it could be a construction project that the township undertakes. So the idea, in the context of a canopy and vegetation policy, is you're looking at all opportunities. So if you're, I won't say destroying, but if you're looking, council supporting the replacement of native trees that may be replaced as a result of any of these changes. And it could be either a new location, or it could be some other location in the township that might say, in fact, it's better if we don't put anything in the way of canopy or tree development in this one spot, why not plant somewhere else? You'll see there's no numeric requirement like you just referred to in the GRCA's policy, but it's more a policy of intent. It's that council would be like staff to look at these opportunities where they occur.
I mean, I'm supportive of the base concept here. I just don't want to have it so finely worded that we're trapped by any one section. And I'm concerned with that 5.11.
Through you, Mayor Kane, and I think that's why it says support, not like the wording above in 510, which is require. So I would view that differently and sort of present that to you in that light.
I like the interpretation. If that's the way it continues, I can support it. However, moving forward, we must remember today.
I think it's on film.
Okay. How long's it archived for?
Further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Report CD 2019-20, Municipal Integrity Commissioner. Looking for a mover and a seconder. The council moved to close session to discuss a matter that falls under Section 239-2 of the Municipal Act, subsection 1, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in comments to the municipality local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. Looking for a mover to go to closed session. Moved by Larry, seconded by Scott. All in favor? It's carried.